Okay, I have so much to cover on this grill review now. After using this for about a couple weeks, I guess it is, that we went into there. This is going to be part two of our review of the Sportsman Pit Boss Grill. Okay, because we used bison T-bones in part one, I thought it'd only be fitting to use steak again for part two. I'm changing it up a bit though this time. I have a dry-aged baseball sirloin steak, some Wagyu tri-tip, and a pork chop steak here. Now we're going to want to crust to form. We want to break down the proteins a bit and just really get that beefy flavor here. So I'm going to try dry brining all three because, well, why not? I'm not going to go into too much detail because this isn't really about the steak. It's more about the grill and the review of the grill that we're using. Dry brining is mostly a catchy term anyway for the very simple process of salting and resting food before cooking it. Some people call this process pre-salting, which is kind of like preheating an oven in a sense. It doesn't really make a lot of sense to me, seeing as how salting and heating are actually just the only steps involved in making this food, right? But it's a discussion for another day anyway, and that's the best practice that everybody does anywho. Who are you to argue with results, right? But whatever. Dry brining though does achieve the goals of traditional brining for the most part, where it's a pretty deeply seasoned, juicy food without flavor dilution, which is a huge problem that comes with wet brining. It affects a lot of stuff when you wet brine things. It also triggers the curing process in a very different way, and I find that the food doesn't quite come out tasting the right way on that. You can argue as well that if you are dry brining, not only are you going to get superior results on that, but it's better for the environment because you're also creating a lot less waste. So it's pretty easy. You're just going to kind of use the same amount of salt that you would normally use if you were going to be cooking it and doing whatever anyway when you're getting stuff ready. So we're just going to take out some of the gray Celtic sea salt, which is what I use for this. If you haven't seen the videos or processes on how sea salt is, the Celtic sea salt is actually made and how it's gray, I would highly suggest checking it out because it's pretty cool. So what we're going to basically do to dry brine these properly is we're just going to kind of flip them over, salt everywhere on it. I'm going to rotate the sides out too afterwards and just kind of rub the salt into the meat so it comes out evenly. So what we can do actually, now that we have it on there, just kind of pat it down. And we're just going to keep adding more salt, and then we're going to rotate and put the salt on the sides here. I'm going to do it with the Wagyu too, just because I think that when you do it, the dry brine and stuff comes with a better result. And that's what we're going to have. Okay, so everything's salted and ready to go. It's on the cooling rack. It's important when you're dry brining to make sure that the cooling rack is properly set up. Basically, you don't want the meat to touch the other meat, and it needs space to flow around and see what's going on there so it can get around it all. This goes into the fridge to make sure that it's okay for, well, usually what I do is 24 hours, but because we're dealing with a 30-day dry-aged steak here already, and we have a Wagyu steak, I still figured it'd be best to dry brine them, but I'm going to wait 4 hours this time instead. And just because we want to see what the results are going to be like, we're just testing it the same with this pork, although that will be seasoned different afterwards. So I guess let's get these guys into the fridge. Okay, so they're in the fridge. So basically, you never ever want to put raw meat or anything also on top of other food that's already prepared or anything in there that can also cross-contaminate. So just be very careful when you get it in there. You don't want to accidentally poison yourself and get bacteria. Luckily, you know, the pan's really clean and it's on top of the cooling rack, underneath the cooling rack anyway, so it will be okay, but I always make sure that there's nothing underneath it just in case. So a lot of people seem to have issues with startup and burnouts that I happen to see online, which is one of the biggest problems and complaints with the Pit Boss grills that you can read online. However, I really don't think that it is a problem with the grills. I think it's mostly because of the target audience as to the retailers that they sell at. The major problem that I see with them tends to be like an operator error most of the time. Let me share a brief explanation as to how the startup sequence works, and this should basically apply to most, if not all, pellet grills. It's not pit boss specific, guys. First of all, you're gonna want to make sure that you take care of your baby. These things are easily over $500 for a starting unit, and seeing how people treat them online and how they're treating them like trash and they never season their plates or anything like that, it hurts on the inside. Like I mean, I had to save up forever to get one of these. You got to take care of them, otherwise they're not going to work. I'll never know why people don't treat things that they have to save up for and spend a lot of money on well. It makes no sense to me. But okay, so first thing we're going to have to do is touch on the initial first time startup. This needs to be repeated if you let it run dry, or if you're changing the wood inside there. There's no fuel in the auger, so it's not going to be able to catch. You're going to have to use that prime button for sure. And this is one of the biggest problems we see with the startup sequence on these things. Especially with the pit bosses, they're way better designed than some of the other units that I've seen. So the fire pot's here, which is in the middle, so you got to get more wood from in the hopper all the way through the auger that's going all the way over to there, so it's going to take a while, and that's where it's going to come through. You want to make sure it's cleaning it, so this is after I cook off that I've done before, which is why it's going to be cleaned earlier and afterwards. You can also see inside here, that is the temperature probe that speaks to the control panel here, which is going to regulate how fast the auger moves to get more wood inside there once everything's caught and started up properly. If that isn't clean, your temperatures are never going to be right, and then you can have a burnout, or you're going to have a really bad cook, or it's going to be too hot, you're going to see swings happen, nothing's going to make sense to you. You got to make sure that gets cleaned up. So the P setting we're going to have to touch on later, which is a little button over there. You can see the P setting when you turn it on and it goes on to smoke, and that's part of your startup sequence. Let's not worry about that right now, but it's basically the timing cycle for the auger movement as it moves through there to go through what has to be done with the regulating the pellets into the fire pot to make sure you have your temperatures and your fire. The startup cycle feeds pellets at a faster rate than the regular smoke setting during startup, mostly because it's got to get the pellets into that pot to start the fire and regulate everything. So if the auger is empty, the easiest trick that a lot of people do when this happens is to chuck some pellets into here to help get the fire started, while you then hold the prime button down and feed the auger. It's going through there because that'll hopefully trigger the fire, and then by the time that starts to go and you need it to regulate, the wood pellets are going to go through and then they're going to fill and you're going to be okay. Now the reason why you need the pellets in there if it's empty before you can get them across there is because the entire startup sequence is on a timer, and the heating rod that's down there actually only gets hot for maybe 4 minutes, and that's not necessarily enough time to heat up, catch a fire, and start to regulate everything that goes through there. So we just got to remember that the full startup can take up to 10 minutes for the whole thing to complete. But so anyway, we have everything currently in the off position. I don't even have it plugged in, as you can see there. That is powerful enough as well to actually work my vertical and the pellet grill. I sometimes do both at the same time. The only trick to it is to make sure that nothing short circuits or goes off there. Is you got to start up one way before the other one, so that way it's not using max power during the startup sequence for both series, because then you could trip that circuit. That's a bad time. But first thing you want to do is plug it in at that point, I guess. And you got to make sure that your hopper has pellets in it. And because we're going to pretend that this is the first time that we're turning this on, we're going to put some pellets into the pot as well, just to show you how people do those things, which is why I haven't put anything back on this yet. I still have to clean it anyway. This is just all to go through and show you what we're doing. But you're going to make sure that the lid stays open. It has to stay open, because that's going to cause you a big problem. But let's go ahead first, I guess, and sort of vacuum up the inside of this and give it a little bit of a cleaning. We could also probably do to just clean or fix these a little bit because there's a lot of dust in there now. So we're gonna just kind of vacuum everything up. I got just like a portable DeWalt shop vac that I use. It's gonna get everywhere on this. Okay, and as you can see, it looks much nicer now. You just want to kind of make sure you don't scratch the back of that either. Just kind of get it a little bit clean to make sure it's dry. That way, well, if you plan on using it right afterwards, when it's dry, you can, you know, rate a proper temperature. So that's something important that you're going to want to look at. Okay, so then we're just going to kind of, you know, put this back on. It goes over here. Alrighty. There we go. Just like this guy. It's on. It's ready to rock and roll. There we go. Okay, so here's the part where we're going to be everything. Getting it started up. So it's plugged in. So what I do is, well, you notice right now, because if you just kind of push that, the light goes on and nothing really happens, right? So what I do sometimes is I actually turn it to smoke first and then I'll hit the power button, but go ahead and hit the power button and then switch it to smoke. But we're not going to do that just yet because, as you can see, we got here, basically it's our empty little fire pit, fire pot. So as I said, people kind of chuck some pellets into it when it's fresh. That's a pretty good amount there. So we're just gonna go back and do that. So there we have that in there. Clean that out. So again, make sure the lid is open when you do this. Usually you have everything else on here because we got some talking to do and some showing some other stuff and you want to see the fire go. We're not actually putting anything on it yet. So we have it on, the light's on, we flick it to smoke, and you would hold the prime button down if this was brand new and you have to feed the auger. But I already have it coming through there, as you can see. So it's gonna catch pretty quickly because I have a ton of pellets in there already. This might actually cause a huge problem, but we'll see. So when this first turns on, you see all this white smoke. That's not good smoke to smoke with. You want to wait till it gets a nice little soft blue hue, and then you're going to have a stable smoke. Once the pellets come into contact with the rod, they begin to smolder. When they get hot enough, the draft fan will cause them to ignite and start to burn. The draft fan keeps this fire going as it spreads. Around this point, the hot rod shuts off and the feeding slows down to normal operation. The startup cycle is now complete as far as the controller is concerned, and you start to see temperature gauges on this come through. That happens like that. This starts to feed. We got that. The fire pot is far more full at this point than it normally should be, or is, especially because we filmed earlier, so you can see that. As of white smoke, we're still on that, but we're using quality pellets that should into a blue hue eventually. If they're clean, nice burn, we would see it better if I had everything else hooked up to this. But yeah, so the draft fan's trying its hardest to get the fire going across the load of the pellets, which is done now. The fire pot, you get them burning. The controller pushes pellets at its normal time to arrive intervals, and there's lots of smoke again as that load of pellets is trying to ignite. So let me just get this grill put back together really quick now that we got this going and it's hot. So this goes on and it's in like an angle, right? And it's actually a really smart design because that just kind of pushes all the juices down to this overflow, which comes down to that hole, which then ends up putting it into the grease trap. We're gonna reassemble the handle. Then this just kind of goes down on this. I do not recommend doing this while it's on, guys, but I am a trained professional, not at all. But that lets us do this. So that's on there. Okay, so grill is back together and assembled. It's ready to start going. Because it's been lit for a while, we can now close this lid. We still got some pellets in there. It's a little bit quieter now. You can see the heat's kind of starting to regulate better. We're gonna see it there. There's a really cool hole there designed for the probes, which we will be using when we do the meat, because it's not a review without using the actual built-in probes for the pit boss, right? Okay, so this is the meat after it's been dry brined for about 4.5 hours is what I actually ended up putting it in there for. So the deeper color here is a sign that the dry brine worked perfectly, and these are going to be absolutely delicious. For this experiment, I'm going to take the dry age, the Wagyu, and the pork chop, and I'm going to place them all on the grill with the sear plate closed on the smoke setting. I'm going to keep it at the P4 setting, which is also the default, and let it smoke and warm up the meat until it gets to around an internal of 100-105 degrees. Then I'm going to take them off and I'm going to cover them, and I'm going to crank the smoker up to about 450, and then I'm going to open the sear plate and then put these onto the sear plate. And once they're on the sear plate, each piece is going to get about a minute per side, then they're going to get flipped. Now, these aren't all going to go on at the exact same time because they're different sizes of meats and different thicknesses. So you can see here kind of how thick these guys are. So I'm going to check on this one first, then I'm going to put this one on maybe about a minute later, then I'm going to put this one on next. We want to test how the open flame works this time and see if it yields a better looking steak. This is because the last time we did with the bison, we just got a nice grill on it. It was hot for a while and used the heat from the grates and the internal temperature of the grill to do the cooking. No flame was going on to touch it. So that's the game plan. The grill's on. It's at about 180 already. So we should be able to take these out, put them on there, and see what happens. But yeah. So what we're ready to do is actually season them. So for this guy, we're going to just add cardamom and garlic powder to it. The Wagyu here is going to get some black pepper and garlic powder. And then for the pork, we're going to use an apple fruitwood seasoning provided to us from Pit Boss Grills. Okay, so everything's being seasoned properly. We have another piece of Wagyu here that I haven't done anything with. I didn't dry brine it. I didn't season it yet. I didn't do anything. But what I'm going to do is put a little bit of steak seasoning on from a steakhouse out here in Canada that is quite enjoyable. And we're going to put that on just with everything else and cook them the same just to see if there's a difference in how these things taste. Okay, so now everything has been seasoned. We didn't season this one the same as this guy because I just don't want the flavors to be sort of the same. I really want to bring out the beefiness on this, and that's what the pepper is going to help with, and the dry brining. This guy, because it's just pretty much fresh and it's just covered in that steak spice from that steakhouse, I'm hoping we're going to get a little bit of a premium expensive taste for this guy. This is just going to be awesome. Always is. They're always great. And then the pork chop, well, I mean, we just wanted to put some pork on there and put a barbecue sauce and see what that's going to be like. So I'm going to go get the probes. We'll take this outside and get them on the grill, and we're going to measure it and wait until they get to about 100. Okay, so we have a nice clean smoke now. So it's ready to go onto the smoker. This guy's sitting at 185. So that's perfect for what we're looking for at this temperature and what's going on in there. There's our meat. So what we're going to do is take one probe, because I don't need to use both of them for this. So I'm going to take the probe and I'm going to put it into that cleverly designed hole that Pit Boss gave us. We will open this up. So there's only one thing left to do with the meat before we get it onto there now and put the probe inside there. We got to give it a little bit of a spritz of some oil. I just find that it just cooks a little bit better and comes out nicer that way when I do it. So I'm just going to treat everything the exact way. Let's just give it a little spritz there. I should probably look through the camera lens when I'm doing that instead of doing this, but we'll rotate that around. A little spray, a little spray, a little spray. These things are awesome because there's no chemicals or anything added to it. You just put in some olive oil or grapeseed oil or whatever oil you want to put into it, and then you just kind of compress it yourself, and there it goes. But they're up here to try to avoid the heat. So let's see if we can get the probe in here with one hit. We're gonna hit. Not too far in. Oh, that goes through like butter. Okay. So that's that. Let's close the lid. Take off the gloves. Okay. So the probe will go in here now. It should start to read. Yep, look at that. Right away we have an instantaneous read of 64. 63, 62. Okay, so it's starting to correct itself. Alrighty. They usually take up to 10 seconds till they become more accurate. It could take 15 to do a read. Plus the probe was just sitting on a hot grate, so there we go. So it looks like we're at about 55. We want to pull that to 100. Then we're going to crank this up to high, which is going to get us like 500 degrees. And then we're going to open the sear plate, sear them, and cover all this shit. So let's get that going. Okay. I've basically got everything I need here, ready to take it off and cover it, because as we're watching it, we're at 77, so I'm going to stay out here now and kind of pay attention to it, because we're in the home run here now. The end game is within 20 degrees, right? So we want to make sure we get it comfortably at the right part to take it off, otherwise it's not going to be the same. So I figured, you know, when you got the shelf here, you might as well use it. I'm just not used to having a shelf like that. It's super convenient. Feel just like, wow, never even thought about that. I love it so much. Okay, so the probe says everything is at 100 degrees. What I did earlier too, just for the video, I made it look like I'm opening it up, but once I hit 95, I put it in there, and that was also reading 95. So that's now at 100. We'll see if that's also at the same temp. It should be. I'm just going to put it back in the hole so I don't poke another one in there. Yep. So they're all at the right temperature. So we're going to take it off. So put that down. That down, put that down, put that down. God, this looks and smells so good, guys. Okay, so now with this trusty table there, we can move that around. We'll cover them. Okay, so the meat is covered. We can take out the probe now because we really don't need it anymore. So we'll clean that up. I've just kind of got it resting on that there. Now you'll see we'll crank this up to high. So we're setting it at 500. We're going to close this while it comes up to temperature. And then we're going to open the sear plate and just fucking give them. It's going. So it's only been like 5 minutes. And we're already at 410, 415. This thing gets so hot so fast. It's amazing. Okay, so we are at temp. Basically, what's going to happen is I could continue to use the pit boss thermometer or the probe inside there to check the internal temperature, but because I'm only going to be searing each side for roughly maybe a minute or two each, I'm going to use the instant read to try to just kind of get a faster approach to everything that's in there. So this is the one that I have right now. I do have an ink bird coming in, which is supposed to arrive tomorrow, so bad day to start doing this, but this guy works really well. It's just that the display is a little messed up and I can barely read it now because I accidentally got it wet. The ink bird is supposed to be a lot more accurate with that and waterproof, so we'll see how that goes down the road. You can see the smoke coming through here. So basically what we do now is, oh fuck, we open that up, sail into our giant sear plate, fire everywhere. Then we're going to open this up. Let's get some shit on the fire, shall we? Okay. Did you hear that? So we're going to let that cook for about a minute and we'll check the temperature. So there's a whole nice one there now already. It's getting there. A minute per side is going to be perfect. Let's see what kind of marks we're going to get. Okay, these are off the grill and now they just need to rest for a bit. Okay, so here we go. They're about to rest. I'm going to cover them while they rest. We got a nice piece of butter on this one, cut it down. Oh, it's going to be wonderful, guys. Alright, these look amazing. Okay, so this is the Wagyu that was just done normally. No dry brining or anything, and it feels good. You can almost pull it apart. Fuck, I can't wait to cut that open. That was the dry brine one with the pepper and everything. That is our filet mignon sirloin baseball steak. And then that is the pork chop. So what I'm going to do is I have some sauces that I also let sit to room temperature while I was cooking everything in here. So this guy is going to get a lingonberry barbecue sauce that I've made. And then these three are going to get a shared little bit of the homemade Hooves chimichurri sauce. So I guess we can try to cut them open now and take a look. I have no way to film this properly to show you me cutting it open, so I'm gonna have to like cut it open first. So there we go. That is the pork chop, which to me looks pretty good. We'll have to cut it up a bit and share it off, but yeah. There's a piece of the bone, so let's sample that. Oh my god. Oh, it's so good. Okay, so what I did was I cut open all of the steaks with my meat cleaver here. So this is the regular one. Yes, me, that looks pretty fucking tasty. That's the dry brine one. Also looks really good. And then there is our baseball steak. Oh, let's get these covered in the sauces. Okay, what I did was I actually cut everything up first because, you know, we sampled the pork. I figured it's only fair if we sample everything else first. So this is the regular Wagyu. So let's give it a go. It's really good. Oh, it's so beefy. This is the dry aged one. Oh my god, that tastes amazing. Now we're doing a baseball steak, obviously. Obviously the Wagyu is better, but all three are amazing. So I'm gonna take like a couple pieces of that, a couple pieces of that. I'm gonna take a couple pieces of that, and that's what we'll put the chimichurri on. And then the pork, because it's laid out, I'm gonna put barbecue sauce on those sides. So hold on a sec. Okay, here we go. So we got the chimichurri, just fucking dollop there just in case you want it. But every piece has some of it on. It has a lot of color to the meat. It's gonna be amazing to serve with some Back Noir wine. That's the lingonberry barbecue sauce poured all over it. Everything tastes incredible, and the sear marks are nice on it. This grill is amazing. So now we talk about the burn off. Once it's burnt off, you're going to want it to kind of look seasoned. This is what the seasoned grate looks like. You can kind of see it's a little iffy there, but we have to re-season it again. It's been a little while as we're still trying to get it on there, and I haven't actually applied the camelina oil yet. I was still using the grapeseed oil for this one.